What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fann of showmefootball.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. He's Michael D'Arcy of KC Sports Report, and we're going to talk about a big problem facing the Kansas City Chiefs next season. We'll discuss that right after this. Ladies and gentlemen of the Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back into another video on my channel. Today I am joined by my good friend Michael D'Arcy of KC Sports Report, and Michael and I are going to break down an issue with the Kansas City Chiefs that I think has kind of gone untalked about for most of this offseason, but our good friend on social media, Brett Coleman, shed some light on this issue the other day with this tweet saying, when you take out Chris Jones' snaps out wide, the Chiefs' edge rotation had the fifth worst pass rush win rate in the league. I cannot possibly emphasize enough how much of a load-bearing wall he was for the whole building last year. They could not have functioned without him. Now, Michael, you and I already know that this team needs Chris Jones. They've always needed Chris Jones, and anyone who suggested in the past that they should have traded him or not signed him, that was always ridiculous. But this just further proves that, like, the Chiefs need Chris Jones, and they're just such a different defense without him. And you saw what Brett Coleman said. The Chiefs' edge pass rush win rate was mediocre last year. And this was an issue that I talked about a lot over the past season, really the past couple seasons. But I think this is yet again an issue that I think was an issue in the Super Bowl, but it was overshadowed by how bad the offensive line was that we just kind of don't talk about it as much as we probably should. Now, the Chiefs did some work in the offseason to address the defensive line, and we'll talk about that in this video. But Michael, what was your thoughts on this tweet from Brett Coleman and just kind of your feelings? Because that was an issue, and we saw it late in the year and in the Super Bowl. I think this was something that came back to bite the Chiefs, is just kind of the lack of activity, I guess, or I guess I shouldn't say lack of activity because they've invested assets at the position. But just what are your thoughts there? I mean, I know that was a long-winded question, but
but you're right. Like, the Chiefs have this issue sometimes where outside of Chris Jones, nobody else steps up. And I feel like it's nice to see someone on the outside acknowledge the fact that without Chris Jones, this defensive line would be pretty bad. Like, without Chris Jones, you can't really force any pressure inside. And even when he was outside, the guys on the other side of him, whether it was George Karlaftis or Mike Dana, probably Mike Dana, they were not getting home. They were not applying pressure. And there's a large portion of the fan base, and I think that those fans are quieter now, but there was a large portion of the fan base that didn't want to extend Chris Jones, that think that he is someone that is just, you know, someone you can move off of, someone that isn't that important to the team. And it's like, I don't know the kind of football that you're watching. Even when Chris Jones has a down season in a statistical category, which is kind of relatively meaningless, like sacks. I mean, Chris Jones' impact cannot be just stated and quantified in sacks. Like, that is ridiculous. And if you just watch him play football, what he brings to this defensive line, it's invaluable.
And I just think you have to go back to 2018 to kind of really illustrate this for Chiefs fans, because that was when Chris Jones had 15 and a half sacks, a career high, which he actually ended up matching a couple seasons ago, I believe. But that 2018 season is largely considered Chris Jones' best season in the NFL. And look who he had on the edges that year. Dee Ford and Justin Houston. Now, while thoughts on those players might be all over the place with Chiefs fans, those guys were beasts off the edge. The Chiefs have not had that kind of play at the edge position since those guys. Now, I understand people are going to point to the run defense and how that's improved. True, but it's you cannot deny the fact that this pass rush just has not been getting it done on the edges for really the past couple seasons. And Michael, all the time on this channel, and it's happened in our live streams a ton, where someone calls me out for my supposed hatred of George Karlaftis. And it's not that I hate him, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. He is a defensive end number 2 at best that the Chiefs treat like a number 1, but really when you look at his pass rush win rate, it's mediocre for a number 1 defensive end on a Super Bowl contending team. He's just not getting it done at a high enough rate. Same thing with Mike Dana. And Mike Dana is another guy that I think is a great number 3 or 4 defensive end in your rotation, but the Chiefs treat him like a starter. Now, to be fair to the Chiefs, they've kind of had to do that because of injuries to Charles Omenihu. But Mike Dana is this guy that the Chiefs treat like a starting caliber defensive end, but his pass rush ability just doesn't justify the amount of snaps that he plays. And then, of course, the Chiefs invested a draft pick a couple years ago in Felix Anudike-Uzomah. He's yet to do anything. But then it just frustrates me how the Chiefs gave up a draft pick last season for Joshua Uche, a pass rush specialist, a guy that came in, walked in the building, and had the highest pass rush win rate of anyone at defensive end on this roster. And they failed to find any way to give him some sort of snaps, even as a third down pass rush specialist. And that frustrates me when you look at how mediocre this team has been from the edge the past couple of years.
Well, that, and it's like, you mentioned it. The Chiefs have not put assets and capital into the defensive line, and they just haven't seen a return on that investment at the level of which the Philadelphia Eagles have, and some of the other teams in the NFL that can really get after the quarterback. And, when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl back in 2023, their defensive line was insane. Like, they could get to the quarterback, apply pressure. And
all of their starters had double-digit sacks.
And did they lead the NFL in sacks, if I remember correctly? Or they were number 2? If they weren't number 1, they were number 2. And they went from like number 1 or number 2 in 2023 to like number 28 in 2024. And that's a huge, huge deal. And part of that is no Charles Omenihu. He was coming back from that ACL injury, and he was kind of slow to ramp up. You also didn't get the production from, Mike Dana last year, and you didn't get anything from Felix. Felix is starting to kind of enter the Sky Moore territory where it's like, all right, I don't know if I have any expectations for you. And so that's not a good position for anybody to be in, and especially a guy that you invested a first-round draft pick in just a couple of years ago. But, Josh, it kind of feels like if it's not George Karlaftis and it's not Charles Omenihu, who's it going to be?
And I think that's where the draft picks, the 2 draft picks from this year, and Omar Norman-Lott and Ashton Gillotte come in, because they were 2 high investments in this past draft class. I'm really excited for both of them, and I like with the Omar Norman-Lott pick in particular, and although he's not an edge, he's at least someone that gives you a pass rush threat from the inside, unlike the Chiefs have had in years past. And I've said it before, I think Tershawn Wharton kind of became that this past season, but he's not here anymore. I'm expecting Omar Norman-Lott to kind of step into that role of someone that gives you pass rush next to Chris Jones. And so that way you at least have someone that's a threat, even when Chris Jones is moving out to edge for those plays in which the Chiefs like to move him out to the edge for those matchups. But Ashton Gillotte is the other one too, who I think a lot of people are expecting to contribute in year one because of the build and the motor. And I hope so. And let me tell you, he reminds me a lot, the way he plays, like I said, the motor, he reminds me a lot of Melvin Ingram. And if you could get a little bit of Melvin Ingram, like when the Chiefs had him a couple of years ago, when they traded for him at the deadline, if you could add even that type of player to this edge rush, I think that makes you a lot better. But Michael, my question for you is, what do you expect out of those guys? And do you think they could potentially fix the Chiefs pass rush win rate woes at the edge position?
You know, it's so hard because I feel like very similar to the Chiefs' struggles at finding quality tackles, finding dudes on the defensive line in rounds 2 or 3 is pretty hard because it's a premium position. Like the Chiefs had success, I would say success in drafting George Karlaftis, first round guy. Most of the elite edge rushers, like the similar, offensive tackles, those guys go in the top 15. Like the truly great elite players go top 10, top 15. But I don't think that we're really expecting, guys like Omar Norman-Lott and Ashton Gillotte to be elite. But I feel like in a situation where if you just look at the defensive tackle room, Omar Norman-Lott really doesn't have anybody in front of him. And Ashton Gillotte, if he can just show up and give you something, that's more than Felix Anudike-Uzomah. And at a certain point, the Chiefs are just looking to throw darts at the board and see which ones hit. And I feel like the Chiefs, threw a dart at Felix and it just didn't hit. And I'm not saying that he's a bust completely, but I think that, the Chiefs need to keep taking swings. And I like the approach to go out and spend your first, I guess 2 out of your first 3 picks on defense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's what you have to do. The Chiefs were left no choice after last season, I think, especially because, Charles Omenihu's only back on a 1-year deal, and he was a free agent, kind of heading into the offseason. So you didn't know for sure if he was going to be back. Like I said, Mike Dana's just not getting it done. He's just not that caliber of player. And George Karlaftis, I think he's a great complementary piece. I don't think he's a double-digit sack, every single year type of guy who's, got a high pass rush win rate that's like winning in the first 2 seconds of the play. He's mostly an energy effort guy that's going to get the cleanup sacks. He's going to get most of his sacks because Chris Jones was the one doing the heavy lifting. And that's really been the story of most of Chris Jones's career, is those guys are more benefiting from Chris Jones than they are helping him.
Well, and here's the thing. George Karlaftis can get you double-digit sacks. It's going to be 12 or 13. You're never going to see him have a Trey Hendrickson type of season where he goes for 17 and a half. Like, he doesn't have that top defensive end potential, and that's okay. But like you said, the Chiefs cannot treat him like he is the number 1 edge, because if that's the case, it's why there's been so much pressure on Chris Jones.
Exactly. And as we stated before, and when the Chiefs signed him to that big contract last offseason, we said, as he gets older, you're going to need to get him more help, because that's the best way to, maximize his effectiveness, to, give him that longevity. Because I think that's unfortunately something the Chiefs missed out on with Travis Kelce on the offensive side of the ball. Don't make the same mistake with Chris Jones. Get him help as he ages.
When I'm actually looking it up right now, but the Raiders had a defensive tackle, I believe Christian Wilkins, who they signed last year.
Yep.
He missed last season, and I think he's dealing with an injury. Yeah, he might miss the entirety of 2025. So it's like, when these guys get older, you cannot take their health, as a guarantee. And for Chris Jones to keep this dynamic level of play up, it's just, you can't expect it,
Yep, and the Chiefs should not take him for granted. And like I said, get him the help. But I think we kind of made our point clear in this video, so we're going to go ahead and stop there. But for those of you watching, my question for you is, do you guys think the Kansas City Chiefs did enough to address their pressure rate this past offseason with the moves that they made, bringing in the 2 draft picks, re-signing Charles Omenihu, who will hopefully have a healthy 2025 campaign? But that's all we got for you guys in this video. So with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com. Follow me on Twitter at showmefb. And then before we go, Michael, where can the people find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report. We're like 30 subscribers away from 13,000. So, guys, if you haven't already, go sub to me, and let's get to 13K.
So there you guys have it. That will all be in the description. As always, we're signing off. We'll see you guys in the next one. And as always, go Chiefs.